Good morning, my friend Tom.
Thanks for getting out of bed early this morning for
It was
me.
tough. It was tough.
Well, if it makes you feel better, it's not just for me, but it's for a lot of other people. But thank you so much. So everybody, it is 7:07 and it is time for 7 minutes of sunshine. And I have
Oh,
a very good friend of
I'm
mine.
gonna put. I'll be right back. I got to get rid of this.
I have a very good friend of mine who's leaving to put the dogs out so they don't bark. Oh, now she won't be embarrassed while I introduce her. So I have Sandy Anderson with me, and Sandy is a good friend of mine. I'll just give you a little background. She went to Northwestern. She got her law degree from Northwestern University. She went to Ohio University, which I wanted to rib her about a little bit because I went to Miami. I'm
Oh, very interesting.
talking about how you went to OU and I went to Miami, and I was going to rib you a little bit about that.
Okay,
But so yeah,
go
uh,
Bobcats.
rivals. And then you got your law degree from Northwestern, and of course was with Voorhees, a partner at Voorhees, retired from Voorhees. You were chair with the Ohio University Board of Trustees, which is pretty cool. You chaired Equality Ohio for many years, makes me smile. And now you're on the board of the Legacy Fund, and also you're chairing the board of Planned Parenthood of Greater Ohio, right? So, which you just had an event on Tuesday, which was extremely successful.
Yes, it was.
Extremely successful. So, obviously, you just sit around and do nothing. And before I turn it over to you, Sandy, I just share how I met you. Gosh, it was at least 20 years ago. I'll never forget. We did a little fundraiser for you, or we were at an event. I think you were running for judge.
Yes.
And that was at least 20 years ago, right? Something like that.
Yeah, 1998.
So more than 20 years ago. And we were at Addo Main Restaurant up on the second floor. Look, I remember standing by the window with you and talking about, and you were kind of struggling with the whole thing of being out and running for office and really just trying to navigate it. And boy, how far have things come? So very cool. So thank you for joining me. I am going to kind of turn it over to you. And I really appreciate you sharing your values, your superpower. And then as soon as you're done, we'll just chat on the other side a little bit. All right. So it's all
All
yours.
right. Thank you, and I apologize. So embarrassing. These dogs are terribly trained. My wife Lynn is not here, so I'm single parenting. She's on the Appalachian Trail, but that's a whole nother story right now. But thank you very much, Tom. I said this was sort of like going to therapy to sit and think about your values, and to go through some photographs and decide what to send you, Tom, to symbolize or give examples of my values. So the four values I hit upon, as you can see, are family, generosity, courage, and service. And these are overlapping, and the pictures, some of these pictures represent more than one of those values. And Tom, thank you for reminding me of that ill-fated campaign. That was a character building character building experience to run for judge. I was not elected judge, but it was a good experience in politics and convinced me that I need to support other candidates rather than be a candidate myself. And I certainly have done that over the years, supporting candidates uh, that I think represent all the best values. So it's true that much of my time and energy since I retired, and I've been retired now since 2013. Um, First, I retired from Voorhees, the Voorhees law firm, in 2010. Took 4 days off and then went back to work right away at Ohio State. I was in-house counsel, deputy general counsel at Ohio State for about 3 years, and then I retired from there, and it stuck. But much of my time and energy since then has been spent with nonprofit board service and community organizations. So I sort of call myself a community servant now, or as Lynn says, I'm still working full time, just not for compensation. I like how you picked my front yard garden, Tom, as the center there of the picture, because that represents my upbringing as a farm kid. I grew up on a farm in Ross County. And in fact, my nephew and his two kids are the fourth and fifth generation that have lived in the old farmhouse where I grew up as a kid. So the fact that I have a front yard garden is symbolic of how I still like to play in the dirt. I love the hope and peace and productivity that comes from growing things. And it's representative of my family roots, but also generosity, because I love sharing my tomatoes and cucumbers and lettuce with family and friends when it comes to be harvest time. And I always think about my grandparents, my uncles, my aunts, my parents when I pick the produce, because it brings back a lot of fond memories. And there is nothing tastes better than a warm, ripe tomato freshly picked from the garden. The photos on the two corners of myself and Lynn, those obviously touch upon, in a big way, touch upon courage and family as well. As Tom alluded to, I have not been courageous all of my life. I have known since first grade or so that there was something different about me, but I didn't know what the word was. I didn't know the word gay. I didn't know the word lesbian. And when I got old enough to actually read and go to the library, what I researched there wasn't so supportive. I learned that I must have a mental illness or some kind of perversion. And it wasn't until later in my life, much later, that I had enough courage to be authentic. And courage is the opposite of fear. And the fear I had was fear of rejection. That's common. Fear of rejection from my family, fear of being ostracized from my nieces and nephews, and now great nieces and great nephews, because one of my very favorite roles is to be Aunt Sandy Joe. So that fear kept me in the closet for way too long. And it turned out that that was mostly misplaced. So you can see me over in the right-hand side with three of my great nieces and great nephews. And I happen to be wearing my Equality Ohio shirt, and then still being able to cuddle with these kids. And it's not, they love me, they do like me. And it's not just because I take them to Disney World and buy them presents, I think. But those kids are very important to me. But back to the wedding picture, that's over on the left-hand side, Lynn and me on our wedding day, the best weekend of my life so far. That was in Seattle, August 9, 2014. That was 11 months before marriage became legal in the United States under the Obergefell decision. But we went out to Seattle because Washington did recognize same-sex marriage, did have equality for marriage, and that's where we got married. And we've been together totally for 28 years. So we really have two anniversaries. Tom, I know you and Rick have two anniversaries. We've got our Veterans Day 28 years ago, our first anniversary date, and then August 9, our actual legal wedding anniversary date. For me, family and courage obviously are overlapping values. And one more thing about the wedding. When we got married, we were way out in Seattle, away from a lot of my family, closer to where Lynn's family lives. She's got a brother in Seattle, for example. And we thought there'd be just a small contingent of people that we invited that would show up. Well, as it turned out, there was such a flood of RSVPs that 2 weeks before the wedding, we had to find a bigger venue in Seattle, Washington. And my sister was my best person standing with me. My nephew read scripture. My niece read a poem, and there were cousins there and other relatives and friends. And it was one of those moments when I was in a room filled with people where I was absolutely, without doubt, I knew that every person in that room loved us. It was just an amazing experience for someone who grew up in fear of rejection. So Let's move on to service and generosity, which are also overlapping for me. I've sort of borrowed from somebody else the life philosophy of life should be lived in thirds: one third learning, one third earning, and one third serving.
Hmm.
Not necessarily in that order, but it often is, and not necessarily separate, but in that proportion. So I've never stopped learning. That will always be the case. But now I'm in that time of life where I am serving. So that's why service is one of my values. And then there's that photo of you and Rick and me, Tom, up in the top corner, again with my favorite Equality Ohio shirt. We were outside the Board of Elections. That was back when I was chair of the board for Equality Ohio. So that represents the work I've done with voter protection, volunteering and supporting candidates, and of course, Equality Ohio. And next to that is the picture of me with Rod McDavis, who was then president of Ohio University. That was at a commencement in Athens, Ohio. I was then chair of the Board of Trustees. I served on that board for 9 years. And I still serve on the Ohio University Foundation Board. And that's why I'm wearing the shirt today for Forever Ohio. And there's even a Sandy Anderson conference room down in the communications building, the Scripps College of Communication in Athens. So that's service, and that's also generosity because of my support for Ohio University. And then there's the photo of the Planned Parenthood contingent down at the bottom. As Tom said, I do chair the board of Planned Parenthood of Greater Ohio. That has been a challenge, especially in Ohio when we've got such a hostile legislature against women's rights to bodily autonomy and personal choice. And that I picked that photo. Again, there's an overlap. I picked that photo because it reminds me of this arc of my life and this incredible experience. So when I was a lawyer at Voorhees, ironically, the office was on Gay Street, right? And the pride parades used to go right down High Street. So if I wanted to, I could go out on the corner of Gay and High to watch the pride parade. But I was too scared to do that as a young lawyer. Years later, then, I started marching in the Pride Parade, including 2 years ago or three, whenever it was. I think it was 2 years ago, this picture, when our Planned Parenthood contingent, large contingent, marched in the Pride Parade. And now the Pride Parade, when we were able to do it in person, goes on for hours, 3-4 hours. There's all kinds of floats and bands and groups and churches and businesses and people and organizations. It's just a huge, wonderful event. And on that day, I think they estimated there were 600,000 people lining the streets of High Street, spectators watching as we went along. And as the Planned Parenthood contingent came down the street and people ahead of us on each side could see the banner and start reading United in Pride, Planned Parenthood, there was this cheer that went up. And just a rolling, echoing cheer as we marched down the street. And every time people saw our banner, just more cheers and roars of support. It still gives me chills to remember it. And I think to myself, this must be what it feels like to be Mick Jagger when you come out on stage. Now, I didn't have to perform, obviously, just be there to show support from Planned Parenthood. And if you had told me when I was 25 years old that I would be doing that with Planned Parenthood in the Pride Parade, I wouldn't have believed you. I wouldn't have believed you. But what an amazing story. So those are the values that I picked, and then I thought about the superpower, and I think what it comes down to is communication. That the superpower that I have is the word communication. And that means a lot of things. That means many things. That means listening, understanding, learning, writing, speaking, advocacy, teaching, connecting, collaborating. So communication means a whole bunch of stuff, which I think has served me well since I was in high school on the debate team. earned a scholarship to Ohio University for their forensics team, had to go on to law school after that, became a lawyer, became a teacher of law at Ohio State Law School in Capitol, and now in community service. Those communication skills come in handy all the time, every day. So that's it. That's the circle.
That is a circle. That is an amazing circle. Wow. And you must feel good. You have used that superpower, Sandy. You have used it in a big way. So I just have to, just as we kind of wrap up, I just have to say, I know you must have a lot of gratitude.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
What a beautiful life. What a beautiful life. I know you have a long way to go, but
I'm not done yet, Tom.
I know you're not. I know you're not. You are in feisty. You should have put feisty as one of them too. But I think you just have so much to be proud of. But thank you for all of the service. Just amazing. And I felt like I know I was at that same Pride parade when you marched in the Planned Parenthood contingent, and I remember you telling me that story, and the convergence of so many parts of your life together, and just the change that you've seen over the last couple of decades and your own transformation and embrace of it, and how much you've been able to serve because you've found yourself, you become fully authentic. And I know that feel really good. And so I have one last question for you. We went way long, but it was worth it. What are you hopeful about going forward?
Well, I'm hopeful. I look at my great nieces and great nephews and my nieces and nephews, and I'm hopeful for the next generations on their openness, their ability to love and include and understand, not be as small-minded as some of my ancestors have been. So I'm hopeful for the future for the young people. And I got to say, with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the White House, I am very hopeful for the country. Very hopeful for the country.
And it's an example of why it matters to get involved in politics, isn't it?
Elections matter, absolutely.
My God, don't they? And so thank you for all your work around that too, through the years. But gosh, I mean, it really matters who's leading where in policy, and that policy matters in terms of people's health, social justice, which we're all helping and working hard on now as well.
Right.
But yeah, it matters. So thank you. I just want to thank you for all your service. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
I've never held it against you that you went to Ohio University, but still love you anyway.
I love you too, Tom. Next time I see you, brace yourself. It's going to be a big hug.
Big hug. We're both vaxxed. We're ready to go.
Yeah.
All right, Sandy. Hey, thanks for joining me this morning. Thanks for sharing. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And remember, even when it's really damn cloudy out, the sun is always shining, and you are the sunshine.
Thank you, Tom.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.